So we may still be in 2022, but that's not going to stop Aston Martin announcing the launch date of their 2023 car already. It's not even the end of December, and Aston Martin have got us thinking about next season. So that's going to be my free rein to start thinking about next year's F1 game, F1 23. And today I'm going to go through some predictions of what I think is going to end up in that game. Obviously just based off maybe some wishful thinking, but also genuinely some things I'm seeing patterns forming from what EA and Cody's been doing post-launch with the F1 22 game, and just generally the trends we've been seeing over the past F1 game. Now the first one is going to be the return of a story mode in F1 23. I think this is pretty much a guaranteed given, because now we've known for a couple of years that Codemasters have actually split their development teams into two separate teams to develop F1 games alongside each other, to maybe explore like different ideas and also just generally give them a bit more development time. So, you know, the F1 game is a yearly game, but to allow them more time, these two different teams work in tandem to make every other game, so they effectively get 2 years of development, if you know what I mean. So the half of the team that made F1 2019 was the same team that gave us F1 2021, and so those two games were the story mode games. F1 2019 had the F2 story mode, F1 2021 had the proper full-length kind of in its own right story mode of Aiden Jackson, Casper Ackerman, and the return of Devin Butler from the F2 story mode. So in F1 23, I think we can expect the story mode to return. What that story mode is, you know, there is potential for it to continue on from where we left off in F1 2021, because at that end of the point, you know, obviously we all kind of got duped in the trailers of that story mode. It seemed like the main character was going to be Aiden Jackson, and it ended up actually being, we were playing most of that story mode as Casper Ackerman, this older driver, kind of, you know, toying with the fact his career's ending, wanting to help out the new gen coming through, and we ended that with obviously them going, you know, working together to defeat Devin Butler in that season. So it could continue on from there, now having Aiden just establishing himself as an F1 driver in his own right. Casper's maybe gone, he's now maybe a pundit or something like that, and he's still going up against Devin Butler. But we saw in that story mode, they were in kind of midfield cars, so maybe now is the time we see them go toe-to-toe in one of the top three teams, you know, Mercedes v Ferrari, Red Bull v Mercedes, you know, all these different combinations could be there. Or maybe they, you know, do a clean slate and just do a whole different story mode. But I think it would make sense if they continued it. We've seen it with other story modes that EA sports titles have done, i.e. The Journey in FIFA. That continued for 3 different games, 3 different stories, but all came together and continued on. So I wouldn't be so surprised if it was a continuation like that. The second thing I think that's going to be in F1 23, going off basically just the reaction to F1 22. I think Cody's and EA surely know, they surely have to know that the reaction to this year's game has been pretty poor overall. There was obviously the usual pre-launch hype, and then when the kind of dust settled and we really saw the game for what it was, you know, especially with My Team Career Mode, I think for us career mode players, it's very much the same game mode as F1 2021, just with the new cars. And they have to know that that is not going to cut the mustard going into next year or next year's game. So I think for F1 23 My Team Career Mode, I think hopefully we're going to be seeing a load of new features. I think there has to be a revamp of just the way it looks and the UI and the way you interact with the entire world. But I think there will be a load of new features, because generally speaking also, with these every other development cycles, you generally then get a bit more kind of, you know, innovation maybe with ideas potentially. Obviously 2020 was the odd one where it didn't have the story mode, but that team gave us the whole inception of My Team. Now obviously I'm not saying the two halves work completely that independently. They obviously are still under the same studio, so there's going to be some collaboration of ideas and stuff they could get maybe into an early game they might do, so there might be some collaboration there. So I just think there is room for a lot of innovation with My Team still, and just based off the reaction to this year's game, they have to know they'll have to come out swinging with some actual big features. Otherwise, they will get slated so much, because this year all the big outlets, like the proper media, written media outlets, really did piss on F1 22 in terms of, yeah, it's good, but there's not a lot there apart from the new cars, you know, a lot of it's samey. So if there was to be another year like that, it's just going to be the start of a slippery slope, and I think they know that, so they're going to have to come out swinging. On the flip side, something I think that will be the same as it has been now for the last 2-3 games is the Podium Pass. That will return. It will be probably the same. I don't think we're going to get a livery editor. I've always been quite hopeful of a livery editor and things like these, but I just don't see it happening with this current business model of theirs of having the Podium Pass and pre-making liveries for us to earn through the Podium Pass, or spending money to get the premium one and then getting other premium ones. Case in point, obviously, they did that new Audi collaboration, which was cool. It was good to see the 2026 Audi launch livery in the game now, you know, early on, but it was also on the VIP tier, so you could only get it if you purchased the VIP tier of the Podium Pass. So it's still very clear that although they might be doing more cool collabs like that, the business model of having it on the Podium Pass is still very much there. And with that also is, maybe unfortunately, I think F1 Life will probably stick around in F1 23 and might be expanded, because I don't usually comment on things like this, but there was a man who leaked F1 Life earlier this year. He's like really well known for getting EA like insider info and leaks correct, and he correctly predicted F1 Life with supercars, etc. He got it down to a T. And this same journalist and person earlier in the summer, or late in the summer rather, after F1 22 had launched and the dust will settle there, he came in with a bit of insider info of that expanding to F1 World with like private jets and stuff like that. Now, the thing is, obviously, that was just in the early stages, I think about 2 months after the game launched, so maybe now, with the horrendous amount of, you know, negative feedback of what F1 Life was, how useless it was, obviously myself and other creators included have tweeted about it, said it in videos to no end of how useless it's really been, you know, filling out the Podium Pass with useless pillows and, you know, throws and whatever, and basically just being a glorified main menu UI changer. I think potentially there is scope for them to realise that, okay, they may have been planning an expansion of that in F1 23, but they need to pull it back because otherwise it's just going to get absolutely hounded on. And in terms of multiplayer, yeah, I'm not forgetting about you multiplayer guys. I don't talk about it often, but that's just because I don't play it myself. But the latest development of the patch for the elimination mode, the limited time event elimination mode, I think that gave us a little insight into where Cody's are thinking of taking like general casual multiplayer on the next couple F1 games. So I think in F1 23, I think they're going to be doing a lot more regular limited time events where it's like party modes like that to try and get more casual people or people that play single player a lot, like myself, to try multiplayer. Because it did work. Me, as someone who plays my team every other day, I straight away, day one, wanted to try out the elimination event because it was interesting. It was different, you know? You have this whole different event with these different graphics and UI screens of, oh, if you're last place, you're going to get eliminated, and you go through and you can spectate the rest of the race. It's fun. It's different. I like the trying that, and I think they wanted to test the waters out on this year's game to potentially do more events like these in F1 23. I think they're also probably going to look at revamping just the whole multiplayer system of like the leagues and stuff, because I've seen league racers say they don't really use them at all, basically. You know, like the big leagues out there still just do the lobbies and keep track of things themselves in terms of penalties and grids, etc, etc. So I think they'll probably try and revamp that a little bit to get more people involved. But I think in terms of getting more casual people across into multiplayer, I think those kind of limited events are going to be their bread and butter, and I think they're going to start doing them way more often in F1 23. And finally, when it comes to DLC, I think they have seen the good reaction from bringing back Portimao and Shanghai. Now, those are tracks they already had in the game in F1 2021, so it was no bother bringing them in as DLC. But because of the good reaction to those, of adding them in, allowing them in My Team career mode, etc., etc., I would hope they've looked at that and thought, okay, there is actually scope of bringing new tracks, extra tracks into the game as DLC, maybe pay a DLC. And so in F1 23, I reckon they might test the waters with 1 or 2 paid DLC tracks coming in, maybe fan favourites from old F1 seasons. In terms of classic cars, I don't think they're going to be in F1 23. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they'll have classic cars down the line in a future F1 game, maybe as more content packs, but I don't think they'll focus on classic cars in 23, because they're probably going to, I reckon, from my view, they're going to look at having story mode, improved My Team career mode, these different kind of events in multiplayer. I think there's enough there, maybe also adding in DLC tracks. I think there's enough there that they're going to think, oh, okay, we can probably not have classic cars in the game, it'd be fine. We've got a lot of stuff going on already. The story mode's going to take a lot of development, of course. I'm hoping big developments in My Team as well, of refreshing it, because they have to, because it was so poor this year. So I think there's enough on their plate that they won't kind of venture into classic cars, and they'll maybe leave that to the other half, the other development team that developed F1 22. Maybe they're going to look into it for F1 24. That's my prediction, at least, and my thoughts on it, because of the story mode and enough moving parts in the game. But those are just my predictions, maybe a little bit of wishful thinking also in a way, but definitely for the story mode, I think that's my big prediction, is I think there'll be a continuation of what we saw in F1 2021 with that storyline, and then just based off the reaction of F1 22, they have to do some revamp of things like My Team and stuff, and then with timed events, I think it just makes sense for the multiplayer. It makes sense of why they'll do it now. So, but let me know in the comments below if you agree with those predictions or are going against them, what your own predictions for F1 23, the game. If you did enjoy the video, hit the like button. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.